Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. And if you joined for the first time, this is part of our e-commerce series for which we meet every week and we review one vendor or the solution related to e-commerce. And for today, we have a very interesting vendor. It's called SAP Hybris, or now recently known as SAP Commerce Cloud. So it's the whole suite. So we are going to have a lot of fun discussing that. Before we do that, we are going to start with everybody's intros. I am going to start with my intro. If you don't know me, I am Sam Gupta, your host and principal consultant at Elevate IQ. Elevate IQ is the independent ERP e-commerce digital transformation consulting firm. On that note, I am going to move to Phil for his intro.
Hi, everybody. Phil Coerper, Managing Director of Ringling Business Solutions. We help executive leadership teams align their digital transformation investments with their core business for the best possible outcome and hopefully to accelerate growth and profit. And I'm coming to you after several decades in the C-suite, helping companies implement front-end and back-end systems, and certainly a lot of e-commerce implementations as well. So looking forward to the conversation tonight, Sam.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Phil. Robert, can I ask you to introduce yourself next?
Absolutely. Robert Brown, principal at Robert Brown E-commerce Consultancy. I come to the show with 20 plus years of Fortune 50 e-commerce implementations and management.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here. And if you're in the audience and joined for the first time, make sure you guys post your questions and comments. We typically try to address them during the show. If we run out of time, then our panelists are going to make sure that you receive your answers. On that note, I am going to start with the quick briefing of SAP Hybris journey, and then we'll open up for the commentary from Robert and Phil, you guys, and then we'll discuss a little bit on the slides as well. So overall, and typically the way I like to do this analysis is always going to be, okay, where are they going to be a fit in the value chain when we compare the existing products that we have reviewed so far, overall from the SAP corporate strategy perspective. So just a little recap overall from the SAP's perspective. SAP is a very enterprise-centric company. They have a lot of products in their portfolio for the SMB market as well, but their bread and butter is really going to be that enterprise play, and that's where they have a lot more offerings. So for example, their flagship product is going to be SAP S/4HANA. That's the backend ERP system that they have, but along with SAP S/4HANA, they are going to have at least 10 or 15 different best of breed systems, and they are really, really good at what they do. Okay, the whole idea is to create this best of breed architecture. And obviously, e-commerce is going to be a big part of any sort of, if you are talking about product-centric companies. And that's why they have this whole SAP Hybris solution out there. Now, when we look at the SAP Commerce Cloud portfolio, and I think they are taking similar strategy as Salesforce, the way Salesforce is trying to market, for that matter, any CRM company out there, they have branded these solutions in a similar manner. So Salesforce has Salesforce Sales Cloud, Marketing Cloud, Service Cloud, Commerce Cloud. SAP is doing the same thing. SAP Commerce Cloud, SAP Sales Cloud, SAP Marketing Cloud. HubSpot is doing the same thing, exact same thing. The only variation is going to be really their brand. I'm glad that at least everybody is sort of speaking the same language, so it doesn't become as confusing. So SAP Commerce Cloud, when they are looking at the combined offering, whatever you are going to require from the commerce experience perspective, all of that is going to be part of it. When we look at the SMB solutions, they are not going to be as rich in their capabilities. When you look at things like A/B testing or the segmentation or the AI-centric capabilities, those are probably not going to be as relevant in the SMB space. Now, when we look at the headless journey, and a lot of people are going to challenge SAP Commerce Cloud or SAP Hybris, that it's a very legacy solution. And Robert, I guess you are going to appreciate this, okay? I think we have had this conversation a lot that, when you talk to enterprises, and I am actually going to bring one more example about the recent incident that happened. And you guys have heard me talk a lot about how awesome headless is. Okay, but in this particular case, I'll tell you an incident where I think the enterprise perspective is going to be super relevant. So, Robert, when we were discussing the enterprise architecture, I think your commentary in one of the sessions were that, okay, if you are talking to companies like AIG, American Airlines, Southwest Airlines, and if they have their e-commerce, they are probably not going to be as sold about PHP or JavaScript, especially when we are talking about the backend code. Okay, so yesterday's news, and this is the brand Jacuzzi. Okay, they had one vulnerability in their React app. So this is the app that they are trying to use to control their the temperature of Jacuzzi that they are trying to sell, and that's a huge risk for human life. Okay, and this was written in React. So now the whole argument about whether we can trust JavaScript or not, obviously there are going to be a lot of different layers overall, whether we can write financial applications inside these front-end technologies. The whole idea of these front-end technology was to make it slightly easier for the designers and the marketers so that they can easily build the customer experience. The goal of that was not really to sort of deal with the operational aspect and the financial aspect, because you require far tighter security. So one of the differences overall from the technology perspective is going to be, when you look at the technology such as Java, you need to go through that development cycle where you need to compile the code, and there is going to be one exe that you need to deploy. That's what most people hate when they look at JavaScript development, which is easy, no compilation, no deployment, no IT, So that's where the real difference is. Now, in the case of SAP Hybris, okay, they have taken very hybrid approach for this. Okay, they have the headless experience, but headless experience is very limited to the front end layer. The other things are still done in very Java and secured and Oracle environment. So, which is what I like about this solution overall in the from the architecture perspective, in terms of where they are headed. So they are able to provide everything that your developers are going to be needing in creating that progressive web app or the headless experience, but at the same time you have that backend security. So even if you are talking about headless architecture, the fundamentals of cybersecurity are still relevant, in fact more relevant, when you are going to be talking about these interfaces, when you talk about metaverse, IoT, IIoT. Oh my goodness, you are opening up all of these, the, what is that called? The vector surfaces in the cybersecurity area. It's probably going to be a chaos in my mind in general. So now the cybersecurity is going to be more important. So overall, when we look at the headless architecture, so it's not just the customer experience, it's also cybersecurity that you need to look at. So it's going to get really interesting. So I'm actually going to pause there. I'll take some commentary from you guys in terms of what you think overall, and then we'll go over the slides. If anybody's speaking, you are on mute.
So I think it's a great thing that, larger organizations that are opening themselves up to the possibilities. This does a couple of things for us. It allows, them to integrate the latest technology and be on the forefront as opposed to the bleeding edge. Close follow bleeding edge. Sometimes you just need to get out there and be able to adapt to new technology and the things that it offers. You do have these shops that are siloed in their old, thought, and it's like, no, we are only going to be Java, or we are only going to be, C++, whatever the case may be. And, the shops that are able to understand that each one of these technologies offers an opportunity for them to either maintain or leapfrog their competition is great, because that also opens the opportunity for, more developers, more jobs, and more creativity.
So I'm going to come at that from a little different angle, and more from the business angle, guys. So, it's rare a client that I'm talking with or working with says, I want to be a trailblazer on code writing, right? That's an unusual thing to happen when they're evaluating their options for growing their business using technology. So I think the key that Robert said is a competitive edge. So if it really is the type of business that they see a competitive edge by really being able to get out in front on how that customer journey and how that front end works and how it interacts, then that trailblazing conversation can follow. But if they're just trying to extend their current business model, their current channels to market, their current products, enter new markets, I'm not so sure that's going to stick. I think they're going to look for something that's a little more tried and true and a little more conservative, if you will, as setting up a front end. I also, as more of the technical layman on this panel, I am constantly working through, well, what really is the advantage, both in comparing the different options out there, as well as comparing the techniques, the data structure, the architecture, and those things. As a programmer and as a developer, I know you guys see that in color. I tend to see it in more black and white, and I'm trying to figure out the color. I'm trying to figure out what really is there that for a client, now in this case, an enterprise client likely, that really is trying to do something great on the front end of their business. I'm halfway down the road, but then how do I get the rest of the way to say getting out on the edge, headless or other types of code, back end? How does that get me all the way? It did, Sam, resonate with me that they're having a back end structure from a database standpoint that got them solid cybersecurity, even with an environment. And I actually do know this technical piece with more vectors in, with more openings in for attack. That's a big deal today. And everybody is dealing with some level of an attack at some time. So that resonates from the business guy on the panel. And I look at this particular solution. They were born in Switzerland in 1997. SAP picked them, I think it was in 2013. And so they're relatively young even today. I'm interested, and I think there's some information that you can share with us, Sam, on what has SAP done. This is a major acquisition for them to say this is going to be our e-commerce front end solution. I'm interested in what they've done between 2013 and 2022 to take this software. I'm not sure it's fully cloud native, and I'm not sure really where they're at on its development to make it really great compared to other alternatives. So I'm also looking for some learning tonight.
Yeah. So one comment there, just to echo whatever you said, Phil. So from SAP's perspective, and this is why I'm personally a big fan of SAP. Okay, 90% of people are probably going to hate SAP. Number one, because of the cost, and number two, because of the tightness that they have in their products, as well as in their development methodology. Okay, but the reason why they have that is because it helps from the financial control perspective, and you need to have that as a business guy, and that's why most business people probably appreciate SAP. Okay, so now when you look at the overall architecture and the mindset of Hybris, when I came in this discussion, I was looking at Hybris. Okay, really super clunky technology. I was never feeling that, okay, this is probably going to be my headless experience. Okay, when you look at that, it's the same the way, let's say, if you were doing web development 10, 15 years back, just making a minor change required that 45-minute cycle. You do a change in the back end, then you sort of compile for 45 minutes and pray that everything is going to work. And then you see the change and then you come back and then do it. It was a nightmare for developers, I'm telling you. Okay, and that's why developers never appreciated this whole, why do we have to be, so thick overall? So right now, if you look at the Hybris experience, in fact, that's what we saw in the case of Salesforce as well. Salesforce still has that thick layer in a lot of different their products, right? But if you actually look at SAP, Commerce Cloud, it looks very different. Okay, it looks as if this is an SAP product. The way the SAP product mindset is, and overall from the product design perspective, SAP is one of the best in my mind. From the product quality, from the product architecture, product documentation, the way their governance processes. If you look at their products, each of the product is going to feel very consistent in their UX, UI, especially if you talk about Fury experience, right? So that's what they have brought in, okay? It doesn't feel anymore that you are looking at old Hybris. So, which is what excites me, to be honest.
And I would expect with SAP that type of, they didn't just buy it and then bolt it on. They bought it and improved it.
Exactly. So if you guys don't have any other comments, I'll go through the. And by the way, one more quick note: if anybody is doing research on this one, I was equally confused as well. So if you are going to look for any sort of demo on YouTube based on SAP Hybris, you are going to see really clunky technology. Okay, you are definitely not going to review this in 2022. So you need to look at SAP Commerce Cloud. It's a completely different experience. Okay, so if you're searching for demo or videos, SAP Commerce Cloud has very different demo experience. They are not even using the Hybris word anymore, I guess. But still, if you look at the underlying screens, then you'll get the Hybris feeling inside. So the product is same, it's still same, but they have completely re-architected for cloud native right now. Okay, so here is the experience, and it is not going to be very different from what we saw in the case of Oracle Commerce Cloud as well as Salesforce. In my mind, those are the right comparisons when I'm comparing the commerce platforms. The newer breeds are going to have very different capabilities. They are going to have very different positioning. For me, when I'm comparing SAP Hybris, I'm probably comparing with either Oracle Commerce or Salesforce Commerce. Those are going to be the right comparisons. So if you look at SAP Commerce, and there are nuances, okay, in terms of the way product is built and the kind of customers they are trying to target. So we saw that Salesforce was very deep into that B2C experience, especially from the headless perspective. Okay, they were also very deep in certain industries verticals, that we do not see anywhere else in any product. When we looked at Oracle Commerce was really deep into that media sort of B2C experience. Okay, they had a lot of different layers that are going to be very relevant in the B2C space. Now, when you look at SAP B2B experience, okay, so SAP Hybris is going to be very, very, very deep into that B2B experience. You are going to see some of the functionality that so far I don't think we could find in the other products. Okay, I'll tell you some of the things. For example, the way the cart functionality works for B2B is very different. Each of the cart is going to be one instance. Now, in the headless world, that's going to be retrievable from your API. So basically, you are looking at a layer of data model that is sitting on top of your cart. So this is almost like one-to-one relationship that each user is actually carrying. So we saw that in case of Salesforce Commerce. I think Salesforce is able to do that, but it wasn't as evident, it wasn't as clear. So that's what we are going to see in the case of SAP Commerce Cloud. Then we are going to see some of the things such as replenishment orders. I don't think we have seen the actual functionality for replenishment orders so far, and that's a very interesting piece of functionality that SAP Hybris has. And then we have the ability to quote as well as ability to place orders for the cart. That's a very interesting piece of functionality that I don't think we have seen in any of the commerce platforms that we have reviewed so far. So those are some of the differences that we saw in this particular case.
Just an observation on that last slide, Sam.
Yeah.
So if you look at those 5 brands that are across the top, there's some commonality with those brands. First of all, they're global, huge brands.
Exactly.
They all have substantial consumer marketing positions. Even Inhall is really a competitor of Black & Decker if you look at their products. And they're a B2B company with a consumer product. In other words, they have complex distribution strategies downstream of their channel. So they're big. They have a complex downstream. They have a huge type of branding and different types of products, and they're global, every one of them. So that's just an interesting common thread.
You nailed it. I think that is where their sweet spot is overall, from the business model as well as from the targeting perspective. And that's where this product is going to shine. Okay, so this is where the whole build process that I'm trying to show. So, okay, this is the initial build that they were trying to demonstrate in their demo, that this is how long it takes to get your first instance running. This is where it is actually trying to create all of the tables in your Oracle database for the first build, so that you can at least use the commerce platform that we typically see. Let's say if you are going to go to Shopify, nobody sees what Shopify is doing underneath. We are only seeing, okay, this is my screen, I'm building my image. Nobody sees that IT stuff anymore. Okay, but the IT stuff is happening in the background, and that's extremely powerful. Somebody has to do that. Okay, so just for this build, they are taking roughly 1 point. I would say, what is that? 1 hour and 15 minutes is what they are taking right now. Now, this time is going to be far lower when you are going to have very small platforms, because they are not going to have as many tables. They are not good. Their data model is not going to be as sophisticated. So obviously this matters a lot, but it also speaks for the volume, how complex the system is going to be. If you look at the core Hybris screens, they are still the same. Once your platform is going to be up, then you still have to go through that admin and log in the way you are going to be logging in any other platform such as API Server or Shopify BigCommerce. So this is the same experience. In this particular case, you are controlling your IT as well as you have the CMS that you can use to customize the experience that you are going to get. One of the differentiator that you're going to see with the SAP is this is designed for very, very, very large and complex sites. Okay, so you are getting that IT capability that Robert typically talks about, but a lot of that is going to be pre-built. You don't have to build all of these infrastructure components that you are going to require when you are working on one side versus the next. Then how you are going to be promoting these builds. In the case of Oracle, we saw that the experience was very the user centric, in that the users could do a lot of things. The marketers could actually promote the build. In this particular case, the experience is going to be slightly more IT driven. So there is a little nuance there. Okay, so I don't know if the target market for this one is going to be slightly more IT, but in this particular case, the build is probably going to be controlled by somebody who's slightly more technical than your marketer. So that's also a difference. But you are going to get far deeper IT capability, so that you are going to have far more control on your development process, on your deployment process, what goes where. And if you are, let's say, in the regulated industry, you probably want to have that control. Otherwise, there could be a real trouble. Okay. If you guys don't have any other comments, then we will look at. So this is how their screens look, which aren't bad, to be honest. I mean, this is what we saw in the case of other products as well. Fairly similar in my mind. In fact, this is probably far more elegant. From the B2B experience perspective, it's very well organized. There's no problem at all. Now, this is where the real beauty is. So I think this is where some of the platforms are going to struggle when you talk about that matrix inventory, when you are going to be talking about style, color, size in the apparel business, in the style business. This gets very complicated. Sometimes your ERP is not going to support this inventory. Sometimes your e-commerce is not going to have that capability. So this is where this product has complete synchronization between your SAP S/4HANA and SAP Hybris. Okay, so this is where, and again, even if they, let's say, support the inventory, the experience is not going to be as great, because when you are ordering these things, and I think this we saw, and Phil, I don't know if you remember or not, my understanding is that we saw this in the case of Infor M3 when we were reviewing that, because that is positioned for more of the style business, the apparel business, when B2B people are going to come and they are going to be ordering, okay, I'm looking for 100 of my size 7, black, medium, 5 pair of whatever, so that's how they are going to be really quick in this ordering process, and they have to move fast. So that's the kind of B2B experience that we are talking about.
Yeah, I think I forget which one of those had it, and I'm not sure it was as robust as this. This is a pretty interesting screen, but yeah, there was one of those two that had this similar type of concept.
Exactly. If you guys have any comments, I can take those or can move to the next one. So this is where I don't think I saw this functionality anywhere else. So this is the cards functionality. I think there is a little typo there. I'm saying cards. I don't think there is a card concept in e-commerce, unless you are talking about credit card. So this is a card with T. And so here we are creating different instances of the card. The card can be saved, can be deleted. You can come back, you can order the whole card. So that whole experience has very deep life cycle. And again, I think Salesforce Commerce is capable of doing that. And that's why they had that data model that we saw. But I don't know if your SMB platforms will have this capability. And this is where your B2B gets really deep. So Shopify has claimed that, I'm going to change everything. I'm going to target now B2B. But now we are talking about very thick database, so how are you going to pull that off? So this is where the B2B experience really differs when you talk about the multiple versions of cards, inside your user account. So it's not just you are building some random functionality. This is tied at the user level. You have to have your authentication security, and each of the users are going to be seeing the versions of cards, and they could go back, order, duplicate. It's very, very, very thick functionality. Okay. Then this is also very interesting. So far, I don't think we have seen this in any other cases. And if you watch the demo of the whole quote process, it's also very different. I'm not too sure which industries are going to use this, but I can almost guarantee that in some cases, the kind of companies that you were talking about, Phil, on top, those 5 companies, they are probably going to require that. So here, what you are doing is you have the cart, and the cart is going to be for the products, and you can place the order based on whatever price you might see, right? But this quote functionality, you can also quote. So I don't know whether the quote is going to be a custom quote where you can use your own product. I mean, if you are looking for something custom, that could be one possibility. The second could be you are not fine with the pricing, so you are sort of sending the code that, okay, this is what I'm looking for, can you do this for me? So I don't know, do you have any experience where the whole quote functionality can be useful? And the quote also has very deep life cycle, the way your cards are going to have. They have their own number. You can store the history. You can see the life cycle of the quotes inside the account. So, Phil, have you seen something similar in any industries?
Not in standard SKUs, right? So typically a quote processes, there's some level of configuration or customization of the product. And in that case, you might be allowing one stakeholder to be saying, here's what I want, and then bringing that back and say, give me a price. I was able to do something special or maybe combine quantities, but this is unusual to me that you're just taking a group of standard SKUs and wanting to put a quote on that. It's almost like, it's almost like a bid process to me.
Yeah. That's what I felt, to be honest, and the way the demo felt. And I don't think, it's going to be as clear on the screen, but you have multiple versions of the code, and they have an option while placing your order. So you can either place the order as card or you can submit as a code. So which is very interesting.
So if it's a bid process, if it's an offer to purchase, are you saying, well, I'll buy 100 of these, but I want them for $95 a pop? I mean, that would be really different. That I have not seen.
No, but that could be a possibility as well. I'll tell you why, because this is a very B2B scenario. So sometimes the customers are going to have offers. This is what I'm paying because this is what I have got from my vendor. Or maybe last time you quoted me, $100 for this product. I'm not going to pay 105. And they are probably going to accept that because, you have a little negotiation there in the B2B cycle always. You have that personal interaction. So here the person is missing. So that's why you probably have the quote process that, okay, send me whatever you got, and then I'll see if I can.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I can sure see, I've seen tiered pricing strategies. I've seen strategies of where there's a clearance functionality where that you might put out there and put a make an offer type of situation on overstock or something. But to actually have a bid process back and forth is pretty interesting. And it might be really, really successful if it's put in the right spot.
Yeah, I agree. Anything else to add, Robert, by any chance?
Nope.
Okay. All right. So here now, this is also very interesting. Again, I don't think we have seen in any of the platform so far. And this is the replenishment. Okay. This is very relevant for B2B. And the reason why this is relevant is we have seen cases where, I don't remember the platform. I believe Spryker was trying to do, okay, if you have the repetitive orders that you can simply duplicate the order, submit the order, that's one. But here you are literally mirroring your MRP process where you are saying, I need these 100 products on a weekly basis. So can I create just the replenishment, each month so that I don't have to do this all the time, which is a very interesting piece of functionality. And by the way, you have the complete traceability of your replenishment. So you have IDs that is associated with that. And then, you can track the way replenishments are going to work. So if any of the orders are going to be shipped as part of that, because you are dealing with a lot of one-to-one scenario in the B2B situation, you might order, let's say, 100 of these items, but you might receive 5 shipments there. because they ran into some issues from the fulfillment perspective. So you need that traceability. Okay, what am I receiving here? Is it related to a replenishment or some different orders? Because they have to sort of control that during their receipt process as well. So again, in my mind, I think this is a very interesting piece of functionality that I don't think I have seen anywhere else so far.
So the word replenishment traditionally would mean that I have picking stock and I have bulk stock or maybe overstock, and my picking stock has been waived. So now I want to bring up other stock and put it into a picking location. So I have 1,000 of these, and I typically have 200 in my pick, and that goes down to 10. So I know the wave is taking that down to 10. So I have a replenishment wave that brings now 80 to that spot within a warehouse. I can see this working where I have the wrong inventory in the wrong warehouse. So now I want it in California, but I got it in Chicago. Typically that would be called something else. That'd be called cross-docking or something else, but that could maybe fit into replenishment. But I've never heard replenishment used as I'm actually placing an order to a vendor. That's not really a replenishment. So I'm interested in what they're really doing here under this term of replenishment.
I think the perspective is important. So I would think this as more of the punch out functionality. And if I remember correctly, Spryker was using punch out a lot. VTEX was using punch out a lot, and we were not sure how that is going to fit in the overall replenishment strategy. So whatever you are describing, Phil, you are talking about sort of the internal replenishment. Okay. Yep. When you have the internal replenishment, what you are going to do is the result of that internal replenishment, when your stock is going to be low, you are going to have some sort of purchase order that you are going to release to your vendor, and then they are going to be sending the stuff to your warehouse, and that's how your inventory is going to be fulfilled. Now, here in this case, what you are doing is the same replenishment that you are going to have in your MRP inside your ERP. Now, you are actually placing these orders as part of your punch out experience, and you are saying that this is what I typically need as part of my MRP algorithm. So just send me this, okay? And my hope is going to be whatever I'm scheduling here as part of my replenishment, that is going to be aligned with my internal MRP so that my production is going to be on time. So that's the whole cycle. It's very interesting. A replenishment could be very confusing because sometimes that could mean your internal replenishment. But we are talking about that collaboration between your B2B, the OEM versus your manufacturer customer that might be buying this.
Right. So if that's true, then you're bypassing the demand planning as well as the supply chain planning and purchase order letting of an MRP system and going right to, I'm going to go ahead and put a PO out there all the way to the manufacturer. I'd like to see the workflow on that, because if there's a robust MRP process that's already doing demand planning and then doing supply planning and then doing purchasing and then managing the flow and the inventory of all that, you can't just go bypassing all of that and saying I want 1,000 of this because some other input made it so. So that I have questions on this one.
Exactly. I don't think we have enough details here, for the audience to understand how this is going to work, to be honest. But these two things are completely disconnected. So I think, Phil, the way you are, thinking about this is going to be, okay, I have completely connected process. That's not how this is working. Okay, the only thing this whole replenishment strategy is doing is it's actually automating that order placement workflow that you have to do every month when your PO is released. Whatever you are doing internally from the demand planning perspective, to decide which POs are you going to release, okay, that is still happening in your ERP or MRP. Here, the only thing you are automating is, okay, as soon as that PO is released, so typically you are going to have 12 PO that go in every month. And after that, you are going to have manual process. You are going to be talking to vendor, you are going to be ordering, you are going to be verifying price, and then finally the order is going to be placed. So that works.
So I can get my head around that. You're bolting that around the other internal processes as an additive quantity, if you will, or an additive priority demand. I can get my head around that.
Okay, amazing. Any other comments, guys?
So here's a question for you. How often do you have vendors that will cross lines based on what their, like, say, ERP system is? So if you have SAP as your ERP, Are you just automatically going to go to SAP e-commerce? How likely are you to layer on top of that a competitor's product? So when we're evaluating this, is this evaluation coming when they already have SAP and they're looking at upgrading their e-commerce solution? So are they just going to automatically go to SAP Cloud, or are they really considering other things?
So honestly speaking, I mean, there are so many different variables in that. And typically the way the process is going to be, look, vendors are trying to, sell their own products. So obviously it's in their best interest to make the experience easier. So you are going to find that all of the SAP products are going to be integrating really well. But let's say if you are going to be introducing a third party, then you are looking at $1 million bill just to integrate. And there is no guarantee that that's going to work. Because obviously there's going to be a tricky architectural design consideration that you need to consider when you are integrating this.
Right. And there's also going to be the sales team's going to get in there and they're going to make it awfully sweet. Hey, look, we'll throw in cloud commerce for pennies on the dollar if you've already got this on here.
And my experience on this one, and I think there's not as much market share gain, for SAP because they have SAP, or Oracle because they have Oracle, or Microsoft is even a better example. Microsoft CRM is just not best in class, or at least it didn't used to be. Maybe they're catching up more. So if you're a Microsoft 365 house and you're looking to add CRM, the likely is if you're spending these types of dollars, you're going to look for best in class, which may be Salesforce or maybe someone else over Microsoft's, even though Microsoft is doing exactly what you're saying they're doing. They're saying, well, we're already a customer. We integrate smoothly. We're going to be less costly to do and less costly on cost of ownership. But I think when it comes to the front end, especially, people look at best in class more than they look for commonality of brand, because it's such an important piece. And the other guys coming in selling against this, even if you're an SAP house, they know they're selling against. They know if they're going to integrate, they're integrating with SAP, and they know SAP's at the table. They're also pretty good at saying why they're best in class and why the SAP version of this has, some challenges, if you will. Exactly. That's a great question, though. I'm sure SAP thinks they got that locked down, and I'm sure their business plan says they're going to grow that.
I guess what I think SAP, would hope that they have it locked out if they've got the ERP. But if you're Oracle, what's the likelihood that you're going to overlay SAP on top of an Oracle?
Unlikely, but you'll take a hard look at Salesforce.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you don't want to go for the rivals, to be honest. That's not a good spot to be in. They'll make sure they'll put every effort to make sure things don't work for you. Look at Microsoft and Google, guys. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Look at Apple. You ought to go for a good example. Look at Apple.
Exactly.
That's fierce.
Exactly.
They won't share the code.
All right, guys. So now we are talking about integration, right? So when you talk about that whole data exchange between two systems, and if you have the configuration process, I think that's where it's going to be really handy. So a lot of people don't think SAP as the configuration company, because as part of your ERP, you are probably not going to get as robust configure to order process. Typically, you are going to be looking at some sort of add-on. But if you look at the real experience, when you look at the configure to order experience, this is where it gets really handy, and this is really designed for those complex devices where you are going to have the real 3D configurator. So it's very, very, very smooth when you are going to have all of these products and parts that are going to be sitting in your ERP, and you are able to manage all of that and then flow through everything from the production perspective. That connectivity is sweet. Okay, it's going to be very hard when you are going to be using a third-party add-on, and if you are integrating yourself, good luck with that. It's going to be fun and very expensive.
I think this is a good continuation of that last conversation. Configuration is it's amazing how it's getting easier and better, and how everybody has a product, a functionality both on the front end platforms, the commerce platforms, as well as the ERP platforms have come a long way on this. So here's a spot where a common platform connecting to itself might really have an advantage, Sam, I think.
Yeah, but Phil, just one point to note there overall from the configuration experience perspective. So there are a lot of people, everybody's going to claim that, you know what, I can do configuration. No big deal. What's a big deal? Here, the configuration that we are talking about, as you are going to be changing inputs, you are seeing it live on a 3D model. Okay, so that's where the real differentiation is. So some systems can do it. Let's say if you go to Infor, they might be able to do it using their CPQ. But if you go to, systems like Acumatica ERP, you're not going to find that. Even if you find an add-on, it's a very basic configuration. If you go to things like BigCommerce, Shopify, WooCommerce, very basic configurator. It's not going to be this experience. So that's where the real differentiator is.
Yep, good point. And just as an add-on, you're still going to need, you're still going to need 3D modeling, to provide to this. It's not going to make up your 3D drawings. You're going to have them, and you're going to have to maintain them and develop them, in your SolidWorks or whatever you're using.
Yeah, and this is the reason why, Phil, I like to have in these sessions, because at least somebody is thinking from the CFO's perspective, because each of the models that you are going to create, that's going to get really expensive.
Yeah, this is gorgeous. Do we design in 3D? No, but we could. You got another couple mil? Well, get started on that.
Exactly. All right, guys, so this is the architecture that we are talking about. And again, they are claiming that they have headless as well, but the way their headless is going to be is very different compared to the other platforms that we have seen. So in their case, what they have done, number one differentiator, okay, they have done this using Angular. Okay, so this is the only company which is not doing React, so which is slightly different. Okay, so from the, let's say, if you look at React versus Angular, sure, if you talk to developers, they are going to be super passionate about, okay, React is everything, Angular is nothing, or Angular is everything, or React is nothing. That's how they are going to feel. But overall, from the technology footprint and the overarching architecture standpoint, there's not much of a difference, to be honest, the way their application should be designed. Okay, so here we are talking about a JavaScript-based front end and any of the API interaction. Okay, that's where SAP is really particular about those regulated industries. That is all going to happen in your Java as well as in Oracle, because from the cybersecurity standpoint, at least in my mind, even if you are talking about microservices, common services architecture, it has to have that thick layer. And if you are building this in JavaScript, number one, React, Angular, they are open source. Everybody's sort of looking at, the code. As a hacker, I can replicate whatever you have in your architecture, and I can, just figure out my way around in terms of how I'm going to be fitting with these libraries. And that's probably what happened, let's say, in case of Log4j. Even though that was part of Java, that was the compiled code. But for Log4j, you at least have the code available. So again, when you are thinking about these things, pay attention to how hackers think. Okay, when you are going to be having a lot of open code in your architecture, it's very easy to reverse engineer, especially if you are keeping everything open. And that's why open source is a great idea. Not too sure when you are running, financial systems on that. So that's where I think I like the approach that SAP has taken, because again, this is designed for very large enterprises. And I don't know, and Robert, I think to your point, I don't know how many enterprises are going to be okay in running those JavaScript workload, especially for the core financial application. And they are probably going to be asking, okay, I'm looking at OAuth 2. I'm not looking at OAuth 0, because that doesn't mean anything to me. Give me OAuth 2. And Phil, when we talk about OAuth 2, the exchange becomes very, very, very difficult. It's very hard to penetrate that layer. OAuth 0 is, just make it easy for developers so that they don't have to deal with all this, security certificate exchange. But again, when you are talking about the cybersecurity layer, you definitely want to make sure that you are going to be secure enough so that nobody gets into your jacuzzis.
Got it. Interesting.
Okay, so this is the Sprectus experience and Spark. What is that? I have no idea how to pronounce this one. Okay, so Spartacus. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, so this is done in Angular, which is okay. And by the way, you can build complete custom, front end the way you like to present this. So, and the way SAP is differentiating this is your presentation layer is very different from your data layer. That's where the real differentiation is. And that's how the traditional enterprise applications were always built. Okay, the presentation layer was always completely isolated, different, because in the presentation layer, whatever code you are going to have, that is going to sit inside your browser. Anybody can go in there and read everything that you are doing and then figure out how to reverse engineer that. So that's where the real differentiation is in general. Now you have the same code base setting on your server, so it's going to be harder to get into that, but still you have that available as part of open source, so you can still sort of mimic whatever they might be doing and forecast and build your hacking algorithm around that and figure out how to get into that system. So again, I would be careful when I am doing any sort of backend JavaScript based development. I'll at least speak to the cyber security expert before I go too heavy in that.
So just for your information, Sam, seeing how you asked, Spartacus was a gladiator. He was Greek. He was a slave. He escaped and led tens of thousands of people and defeated Roman forces in 71 BC.
So now I know why SAP chose that name.
In some ways, the movie Gladiator was probably somewhat set around that.
I think for half of our listening audience, they're probably going to remember the TV series Spartacus from 2010 to 2013.
Oh, the good one.
Yeah.
The obscure reference is going to be the Tom Hanks movie, I Am Spartacus, from That Thing That You Do.
So
and wasn't that also echoed by who was the senator who echoed that and gave a speech saying he was Spartacus and continues to take grief about that to this day? I won't try to find his name.
Yeah, guys, I guess we can have a show around Spartacus.
We wanted to make sure we were providing social context for your commentary.
I know. Thanks for making
we're playing our
feel
position
that.
here, Sam.
Appreciate that. All right, guys. So we are short on time. So let's talk about some of these APIs as well.
I think we got yelled at, Robert.
Yep, we did.
You guys are so funny. All right, guys. So the API layer, right? So here we are talking about the cart, and I think we saw this in the case of Salesforce. We saw in the other systems as well. And this is the API functionality that they are able to provide, which is going to enable the headless experience, irrespective of the mode you might be going for. Okay, and this is the IT experience that I was talking about. It's really deep and thick, the way it is done, to be honest. So it's really designed for those enterprise, workloads, because they are probably going to require all of that. Now, this is the A/B testing one. And I think from the segmentation perspective, we were probably thinking that Salesforce is going to have slightly deeper capabilities in building those audiences for the B2C experience. But I think SAP Hybris can do the same thing. In fact, they can be slightly deeper, the way they are structuring their audiences and then how they are correlating with the actual segment on the site. The editor is not going to be as friendly in general. SAP in general is not as great at customizing their UI. So they are probably going to carry over the same experience here as well. If you are going to be looking at I think they are calling Smart Edit. And the Smart Edit is the sort of tool that allows you to customize the look and feel and move around your widgets. But it's not going to be as slick as your VTEX or any of the platforms that we have seen so far.
I'll be honest with you. If the size companies that we're dealing with, the likelihood that they're doing A/B testing, at least I believe, should be pretty small. If they're that large and having the amount of traffic necessary to have this size work, this type of tool, they should be doing multivariate. It's just faster for them to, just do A/B testing. That's going to take a month of Sundays for them to figure something out versus multivariate.
And even mid-market companies are moving away from this for the same reason, Robert.
Yeah, I've been on the bandwagon for multivariate ever since I learned Adobe's Test and Target. I think that's a great product, but why others aren't moving in that direction, I can't tell you. Maybe they are, and just using the term du jour and saying, our AI is doing it. Who knows?
And it may be my fault, to be honest, Robert, and I have referred it as A/B testing, but in my mind, I think this is going to be multivariate testing because the number of variables that you are going to have. So thanks for clarifying that.
Okay.
Some more slides and before we can open up for the commentary. So here we have a lot of different things, and this is the audience building experience, and that is very thick and deep. The number of layers that you are going to have overall in controlling that. So again, I think Robert, that you are the term that you mentioned overall from the multivariate perspective, the number of variables that you can have in this one, and the layers of variables. Okay, it's just phenomenal in the case of SAP. So that's where the real differentiation is. So we saw in the case of Salesforce Commerce Cloud that they had a lot of different variables and the layers of variables as well. But in this, I think SAP is probably the deepest in that analysis. That's my perception so far. They have a term called influencer. I don't know if you guys have seen anywhere, how that might be used. Robert, any insights there by any chance? Influencer?
Well, I mean, influencers are going to be, the standard social media kind of influencer. And so you may actually have some personas that fit that role. That's my thought on this.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anybody else use it in this context.
Yeah, and based off the way that the screen is structured, I'm not too sure if it is really that functionality, because here you are adding one influencer, and the type of influencer is going to be add to cart rate, average unit retail conversion. It's possible that it may be that functionality, but
I think you're adding something that's enticing someone to take action, right?
Yeah.
And maybe it's a widget, maybe it's some other content, or maybe it's a deal, or but that because I was looking at the same thing. I was just looking at that pull down that's sitting there, and it looks to me like you're trying to move the customer forward to the next click, right? Revenue influencers maybe is a other people bought widget, for example. I'm just making that up, and that seems to make some sense.
But I think you are closer, Phil. You are right. My understanding is going to be this is sort of some sort of KPIs that are going to be influencing your processes, and they are trying to track that. That's probably going to be my understanding as well.
Now, I also have a detail. Read to the right of that. Please add at least one influencer to enable mid-card with a D preview.
It's mixed card.
Mixed card preview. So preview says that something's going to come up that's going to show you what you could do, maybe. Mixed card.
So mixed card is the functionality that they have that we have not seen anywhere else. And so the way the demos were structured, my understanding of mixed card is we are talking about some sort of assortment that you want to show to your customers, and then you are sort of influencing the behavior, how you want to show it to them, and how it is going to appear. For example, let's say if you have the mix of, I don't know, maybe bags and the handbags and the jewelry that you are sort of trying to combine and trying to figure out, okay, what is going to resonate with your audience. So that's going to be the mixed card experience. So there is a specific object that they have. It's called mixed card, and that you can influence based on all of these KPIs. So again, I think the point is,
I think we're close. I think you're actually close.
Yeah. So the point is, they have a lot of layers, of control that you are going to have. And again, I think, there is another layer of multivariate, maybe multivariate they should be using here based on the number of layers that they have in this. Sorry. Phil, were you still reading on that?
I'm good, Sam.
Okay. So I think we will cover just one review, and then we can open up for the commentary. I don't know if we have anything alarming here. No, I think I'm good. I'm actually going to close the session as well as, open up for the commentary.
So one of the things I noticed in here is when looking at the reviews, satisfaction with Commerce Cloud, it's the first one on the right-hand side. It says Spartacus is not fully built out. I was looking at some Gartner consumer reviews of the SAP Commerce Cloud, and they're actually rating it below some of their competitors. How much we can actually believe that, I'm not quite sure. But for example, when you think about a quadrant, They put SAP in the same place as InterShop and BigCommerce when it comes to, from the Gartner Peer Insights Voice of the Customer. They rank Salesforce and Shopify as the customer's choice. I just thought that was kind of interesting.
Phil, any commentary there?
Yeah, and we have this conversation all the time, guys, that, you know, some of these reviews you really got to be careful, but that one is worth looking at. I mean, Gartner certainly is gold standard in a lot of ways. The only one, and Sam, you've taught me this in past conversations, the way they slice and dice and define the space that they're talking about often can be a little misleading, or can make one thing look different when it may not be different for your specific application. So a client may look at that and say, oh, geez, look at that. They're down in that lower left quadrant. But in actuality, what they're looking to buy and what they're looking to do with it isn't in that quadrant at all, isn't in that magic quadrant sector at all. So that's the only thing I would say. But it's got the Gartner name on it. You got to look at it and say there's something there. I think that you know, a couple of things I try to look at every week. You know, they seem to know their lane, yep, which is awesome. It makes me crazy when these companies don't really work their lane and try to convince you that there's something, you know, there's something over here that is really what they do. That's cool.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed what I learned, both from reading up on this and then listening to you guys on the database structure and how they're looking at headless and how they're looking at security and things like that. I thought that was a real positive. It's a very powerful system if you're a big, complex company and are making a large investment in your front end. So pretty good review. I mean, pretty positive. If you're not in that category, this is going to be way too big and way too expensive and probably way too complicated for you to really invest and develop a return on your investment, in my opinion.
Okay, amazing. Robert?
I couldn't agree more, Phil. It's I think this making a decision for SAP is going to be where you have your capital allocated already. If you're already an SAP house, you're going to have the SAP resources, you're going to have the experience. And so, you know, upgrading or maintaining this product is just going to be a no-brainer. You know, why would you switch channels? If you're actually considering a new tool, if you're looking to replace what you have already, then that's a different conversation. And there are way too many factors in that conversation to be able to make an A/B choice like this one or this one.
Well, and I'll just say one other thing that factors into that is that, you know, do they have equivalent products with some of the other large front end guys? Do they have a service cloud? Do they have a CRM capability as well as their commerce cloud? Because that's the other way that the best in class argument works, is that, yeah, you're SAP or your Oracle or whatever it happens to be, Microsoft, and you're considering this as an add-on, and there's some positives for you on that. But as best in class, look at the other products we have that we can bundle around what we do. Do they have those offerings in best in class as well? And that's a question you should really ask and answer for your individual situation as a company, because the answer may be yes and maybe no.
Okay, guys, so we are close to our time. Probably we can take some more short comments if you guys have, or we need to close.
I'm good.
Phil?
I'm good. Good session tonight, Sam. Give us the big finish.
Okay,
Talk about Spartacus. We got one
minute.
minute.
we have to talk about that, right? I mean, you have to make sure that
I told you we had time to go over Spartacus.
I don't have any life. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I told you we had time to do some public service work tonight.
I know. Thank you so much, guys. You're awesome. Okay, so that's it for today. If you joined for the first time, this was part of our e-commerce series for which we meet every Tuesday. Not Tuesday, Wednesday, sorry, at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. And we pick one vendor or the solution related to e-commerce. So make sure you guys are going to be here next week. We are going to come back with another vendor or the solution and a new term that these guys can play on. On that note, thanks everyone for your time and insights tonight.
Thanks,
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Phil.
Thanks, Robert.